Because we're all screwed up because we're not looking at ourselves. Let's say this passage. To me, this is where real tolerance is. Christian tolerance is based on that passage. Let's read it together. The Lord does not delay. It is not tardy or slow about what He promises.
According to some people's conceptions of slowness,
but He is long-suffering,
extraordinarily patient toward you, not desiring that any should perish, but that all should turn to repentance.
That's God's desire for us. Tolerance. So I got T-O-L-E. That's called tolerance. I think this is a good way of looking at it. Take advantage of opportunity to be Christ-like. This is an opportunity to be Christ-like. How do I shine light? It reminds me of the time when I went into, I was at Eastern Mennonite Seminary, and I was getting my classes. I went into the registrar to sign up for different classes. What are you here for? How long are you going to be here? And in the back of him was this picture of this newly graduated seminarian. It says seminary in the background on this building. And here he is with his hat, cap and gown, and he's got a candle in front of him, holding it. He says, I came into seminary to learn how to curse the darkness, and they gave me this light. Always loved it. It's so much easier to curse the darkness. Don't curse the darkness. How do we deal with the darkness? By getting weird, being intolerant, and in a way that's just going to curse everybody and put every... No! How do we do this? By shining the light. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. This is what they said. You can read this whole thing in Matthew. Some people say, John the Baptist was so straight-laced, he was out in the wilderness and he had this and that and the other. And, he didn't even touch a drink of alcohol, but Jesus came eating and drinking, and they say, here's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Jesus was a friend of tax collectors and sinners. How could he do this? He was patient. He had tolerance. He looked beyond their faults and saw their needs. Isn't that what God does? But wisdom is proved right by our deeds. So the question is, so what do we do? Someone asks us about right and wrong. We need to talk about what's right and wrong, according to the Bible, but not with judgment. The Son of Man came not in this world to judge. He came to save, to help people.
I worked in manufacturing. This is metaphorically. Like a place called Carlisle. I worked in the friction department, and everything had to be a certain thickness all the way around. And they came out with this new product running on these old machines, and they wanted the tolerance to only be 1,000, plus or minus 1,000. But the scrap rate was through the roof. So no matter how we tried, we could not meet that target. So they increased the tolerance to cut the scrap rate.
Right.
So less of them were thrown into the fire and burned. Literally.
That's good. Take advantage of every opportunity to Christ like, obey God and His Word rather than that. And you know what that's going to get you sometimes? It's going to get you persecution. Jesus says you're going to be persecuted. Why would you be persecuted? Why would people ever get persecution by being a Christian? Because some things you don't tolerate. If you tolerated everything, I guess you'll never be persecuted. Right? Peter and the other apostles, you must obey God. You must obey God. And you know what? You read right after that, they got beaten and flogged and let go. People won't understand you. follow Jesus. You have a different way. Now, love others as you love yourself. There's a thought. If I were in that predicament, how would I like to be treated? Well, I want people to condemn me and rake me over the coals. No, you don't. Love others as you would love yourself. If you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself. And if you do that, you're doing right. That's the right thing to do. E, expect there to be differences of opinion. This is an interesting passage in Acts 15:39. Paul and Silas had such a sharp disagreement. Now, and you know what happened if they had such a sharp disagreement? They parted ways. They parted company. Later, they realized not everything's a moral issue. We make disagreements out of stuff that has nothing to do. We should be disagreeing about it. You know, some things aren't worth disagreeing about. Well, I like oatmeal raisin cookies. Well, I like chocolate chip cookies. A good chocolate chip cookie is always better than oatmeal. Oh, come on. Those things don't matter. That isn't about right and wrong. That's just about preferences. There's going to be differences of opinions about preferences, not principles. Principles and preferences are different. And on principles and preferences, just say, if it's a principle, it's in the Word of God, then we say, I just can't do that. I can't agree with that. I'm not judging anybody, I just can't agree with it. All right, respect others' values and opinions with grace. Great passage, Colossians. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. How many know that oftentimes it's our mouth that gets us in trouble? It's our mouth. We need to ratchet it back and be careful. What's the gracious thing that I can say? What light can I show in their life without burning them? I need to show some light, but I don't want to kind of burn them. Season with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Whoa! A, acknowledge that you may suffer for what is right. Even if you should suffer for what is right, you're blessed. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened. Jesus, this is even if you should suffer for doing right. Oh, well, it's the right thing to do, so you do it. That's the price of following Jesus, right? And never allow bitterness to take root in your heart. How many over time you tolerate, and keep tolerating, that eventually we could, I'm sick and tired of putting up with this blankety blank stuff. That's not real tolerance. That's just you were sweeping it under the rug and not getting honest with yourself all along the way. Love people. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God and that no bitter root grows up, because it's going to cause trouble and will defile you.
Let's say right before that, make every effort to live in peace with everyone.
Yeah, make every effort to live in peace with everyone. And then it talks about holiness right in that passage too. C, call upon God for wisdom and discernment. Sometimes we are in situations that we don't like. How many come into that? situations you don't like, you don't agree with, and you just got to put up with it. What do you got to do? If any of you lacks wisdom, ask God. He gives generously to all without finding fault. It will be given to you. There is a way out. There is a way through. Sometimes Jesus' way is a third way. It's not my way or the highway. Jesus sometimes has a third way. I like the passage where it says that Jesus, in one of his travels through Samaria, he walked the boundary of Samaria and Palestine. I always thought about that. Man, he was walking right. Why was he doing that? He could talk to the people on both sides. That was pretty wise. And he walked the boundary. Why did he walk the boundary? I think, man, well, he went over here and talked to these people, then he went over here and talked to me. He walked. There was a different way. It's either you're on the Samaritan side or the Palestinian side. Well, no! There's a different way. Jesus has a different way. Oftentimes. And he expressed thoughts on controversial topics with careful consideration. Well, I love the passage by Paul there. I become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. I become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. So who is influencing who? Go back to the question from the very beginning. Who is influencing who? Are we having more influence on the world, or has the world have had more influence in your life? How about just within our families and communities? Who has more influence? Here's a clip by Jefferson Franklin. It's kind of a sobering clip.
We need to guard our influence. Proverbs 22 and verse 1 said, a good name is rather to be had than riches of silver and gold. Be sincere. Guard your influence. Guard your influence with your family and with your children. I want it to be said it was easier to live right, to live godly, to live holy when Jensen was alive. And when we have the right influence, that will be our testimony that our children will say, it was easier to live right when they were alive. Now, if you weren't mad, you're going to get mad now. Those bright, shining eyes are watching you. Those sons, those daughters. You're casting an influence that's going to live on, and when you're buried, it's very possible, very even likely, that they'll be buried in the same direction that you are. Therefore, the sobering question I propose to you today, would your kids have a better chance of being saved if you were not their parent? Or you were not their grandparent? If you won't serve God for yourself, do it for your children. Do it for your children's children. In the same grave where your bones lie, lies the bones of the ones you lead astray or you lead down the path to heaven. Somebody is following you.
That's a great question. It closes out there. If your kids have grown up in another home, would they have been more likely to come to know Jesus? More likely than growing up as you and you being the parent. What does that have to do? That has to do with us. Do we tolerate, do we give them Jesus? Are we spreading the light? Are we holding the light out to our family, to our relationships, to our kids, to our grandkids? Or have we just compromised lots of different things. So Mike got stirred up, which I think it's not all bad. I hope you stir us up, okay? We tolerate. We tolerate evil in our life. We tolerate compromise in our life. Forget about everybody else, God. Help us to take this as a personal knock from your heart to our heart. Who are we? Where are we going? Where is our life? And Lord, I thank you that you have been so patient towards us. And that you're just waiting for us to truly dive in and follow you wholeheartedly. Thank you for who you are, God. I pray that you would water this word and make it life to us. This isn't, the call here is not for condemnation or judgment. But that we would see the path clear how to follow you and live for you. In Jesus' name.
Tolerance. Who's tolerant? Y'all tolerant? When I heard you were talking about, first thing that crossed my mind was a man that I greatly respect, name of Warren Sky. Chief Warren Sky of the Seneca Nation, New York, and Canada. He told me this story that when he was in high school, this would have been back in the 40s, in Buffalo, New York, he spoke Seneca, and the teachers took him down to the basement and handcuffed him to the boiler. Yes. Handcuffed him to the boiler for 3 days because he didn't go home. Native Americans didn't get to go home every day like we white kids. You showed up once a week, and then you got hauled out to where your parents lived. He remembered the kindness of that Christian school. But it tells me the kind of tolerance, that's what I see, okay? I remember Columbus. Maybe some of you have heard that Native Americans don't think much of Columbus Day. There's a reason. Native Americans there had a story, a creation story, that a white man would come from the sea, and he would be a great man, and he would show them all kinds of powers and love, and show them the way, the true way. So what happens? Part of the commission of Columbus was what? Do you remember?
Evangelism.
Evangelism. That's right. And that went from South America, Central, Mexico, Caribbean, anywhere the Spanish went, they were to make converts. And if you didn't get converted, you got killed. You got hung. Your women got raped. This is what Christianity, what rings in my head. I see the tolerance. My daughter. She got hooked up with this Christian church, which we thought was a really good deal. Somehow or another, her expectations and theirs didn't jive. I don't know. I didn't see the love. All I know is that she burned her bridges when it came to a Christian church. And she deals with witches. And we got to live with that. We don't know if we did it. It's our fault. Was it our lack of tolerance? I mean, when she got married, I had to give her away to a witch. You think I like that idea? You're wrong. But she was illegally registered in Ohio to marry people, so she did it. To my daughter won. Should I have said no? I tried to. I didn't care for the kid myself, so I knew it was a bad deal. But she wanted it so bad. What's a parent going to do? That's the kind of tolerance I tolerated what she wanted because she loved this kid. And now I see the results of being tolerant. What you say is absolutely true. I mean, you got to set a line somewhere and live by it. But some people set a line that is just way too intolerant. And so-called Christians, I mean, they've been good or bad. My experiences here have been great.
We need to stand
As an angel, you've been super duper.
We need to stand for truth, but with grace and with love and sacrifice at the same time.
And I have tried to live that way. I'm
And
sure
it's
I've
hard.
slipped.
It's hard.
I'm sure I have slipped.
It's hard.
But those are the things that came to mind, and that's why it all boiled up.
That's fine, brother.
And
That stuff needs to boil up and boil out.
well, I mean, the alternative would have been you would have to wake me up to do this. So, yeah, I guess it's a good thing.
Stirred up.
I'm stirred
Yeah,
up.
but there are,
That's a true story, by the way, with Elder Scott.
They have in church, because I took church history, there were many times where Christians went into places and they would just kill people. I mean, it's filled, church history is filled with it.
Look at the crusade.
That's what I'm saying. They called the Crusades and they just killed a bunch of folk. I mean, that has nothing to do with Jesus. That's not the Jesus way. Jesus died for people.
But it's the same thing with the Society of Friends, known as the Quakers. Same thing as the Pilgrims. They didn't kill themselves, no, but they had no problem killing Indians. They were all. I mean, I've got ancestors who are registered as being in the Revolutionary War, but they were conscientious objectors. But they also led what was called the Freedom Force, the Safety Force, which was part of the French and Indian War. They had battle against the Indians, but that didn't count. So there's strange things going on in this world.
One thing I didn't talk about, like what else did Jesus tolerate? I think he tolerated slavery. Slavery's never talked about in the New Testament, and there's not even a record of Jesus ever talking about slavery. But I think he tolerated that. There was just, the reason he came was to instill in his disciples and go to the cross. You can't do everything. I believe the way women were treated back in the day was not good at all. Jesus is not recorded talking about that, but I think he tolerated certain things. There's just so much you can deal with. How about war? Is war a great thing? Jesus never talked about war. But I think he tolerated people getting killed, this and that and the other thing. So there's different subjects that were never talked about. And there's one book out. It's called
Slavery, Sabbath, War, and Women.
Slavery, Sabbath, War, and Women, and it talks about these things that. How come Jesus never talked about these things? Well, there's certain things that he tolerated. Doesn't mean it was great. Doesn't mean it was good. But, the Bible is silent. Or what did Jesus say about homosexuality? I don't think, he didn't, there's no record of Jesus ever talking about it. Now, Paul talked about it. But I think Jesus, you can't fight every hill that comes down the road. You got to know what God's called you to and follow the path that God's called you to. You can't fight every hill. So anyway, I'm sorry. But you're right. The way, the injustices that are done for people all the way around the world. This is horrible. And like the people went in and gunned down the people in, what is it, in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
That's terrible. Yeah, what's going on there? That's horrible.
See, Dodge City. Anybody heard anything about that? Dodge City is 70% non-white. The government of Kansas has decided to move the single polling place that there was outside of town by a mile. And many of the 70% Native American or Hispanic, they don't have cars. And so it's going to make it difficult for them to get to the polling place, even though there were buses being lined up and whatnot. And this is all to keep them from voting Democrat. It was done by the Republicans. And I don't want to get into Trump or anything like that. This is just one of the voting things.
Actually, gerrymandering happens all over the country.
Well, it's not gerrymandering. This is not
It goes both
gerrymandering.
ways.
It's not gerrymandering.
They did
This was
something
purposely
similar to-
moving of voting
They
areas.
did something similar to Akron.
And I mean, this is an intolerance.
Tolerated it
Can't
long
tolerate
enough.
this anymore.
You're gonna see that one.
It's fine with Ed, she got to do it, man. I don't want to deal with the other.
That stuff's gone both ways, though.
I'm not going to get into it. But that has happened there. Fortunately, the federal government has stepped in and trying to make them move it back again. But they sent out notices 3 times to the people of Dodge City saying it's moving here, it's moving there, it's moving here. And so now people don't know where to go. It's going to be a real big fiasco. All right, announcement.